Okay, wonderful. That's it. So now if I go to server 1 here, the next thing I want to do actually is, because I want to control all the servers on this particular pane rather than going separately here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually register the domain, register all the servers in this particular pane. So to do that, go to View, Register Servers, and this window will pop up, and then go right-click and go New Server Registration. Click on that, and I'll see this window pops up. Select the appropriate server, in our case, all 3 of them, and you can test it. So long as this connection is fine, we can go ahead and go save, and now we've got 1. Let's do them for the other 2. This makes life a little easier to just test and save. And then the last one, registration for 3. Now obviously we'd be doing more if we had more, but for our sake, we're good. So now we're good, and we can get rid of that right now. So we want to actually now, the next thing we're going to do, check 1 is done. So far we've done this. Must install Windows failover clustering service on each node, and we've done that. The next thing I'm going to do actually is take a backup of each server. Actually, I should have this here first, because I think that's the sequence we need to do. And again, I'll be providing you with this, so don't worry about all that documentation. So we've done this. The next thing is to create a shared folder so that they can access all the backups. So let's do that. So go back to server 1. And now I've already done this, and we've done this before. So what I'm going to do is, and I'm going to provide you with this databases. As you can see right here, if I expand the databases, you don't see database called Rep 1, Rep 2, and Rep 3. I'm going to create 3 databases called Rep 1, 2, and 3. And what I'm going to do with each of these databases, you'll note here. So I've also done this, register all servers first. Note, database created with full recovery mode. So I'm going to deliberately create these 3 databases with some functionalities that are missing, just to illustrate what happens when you're executing always on with certain capabilities missing. And one of them is going to be, I'm going to have it in a simple recovery mode rather than full mode. And the other one is, I'm not going to take a backup of a database and see how always on responds. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to take a backup of this database. But before I do that, let me talk about where I'm going to dump it. I'm going to dump it to this directory, as you can see. So this is for Rep 1. I'm going to dump it right here. And the folder that it's going to go to is right here, as you can see the path. So if I do a comparison, this is the path it's going to go to. It's going to go to server 1 database. And I'm going to make sure now this folder called backup has access rights for server 1 and server 2. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to back up not only server database 1 to this directory, I'm going to back up Rep 2, then I'm going to back up, or I'm going to just do those 2 actually. And if I look at it here, this is the same directory as this one here. The reason I'm pointing it is if I right click and go to share with advanced, you'll see that this is a network path. If I click on advanced sharing and go permissions, you'll see that I've taken all the databases, actually the servers themselves, SQL Server 1, SQL Server 2, SQL Server 3. I've added these servers to that particular folder, and I've given them full control. So I've gone through this many times, so you should be able to do it. So right click this, and when you get to this, just add these various folders. So now all servers have permission to that folder, and that's what we need. And that's this folder right here. So the first thing I'm going to do now is I'm going to take a backup. I'm going to create a database called Rep 1. And this is going to have full recovery mode. So I'm going to create this and execute it. Oh, what happened here? Well, let me do this, create the database first. It's already been chosen. Okay, so let's go over here, refresh it, and there's one. Now, if I right-click and go Properties and go Options, you'll see it's full recovery mode, and that's fine. So now I'm going to move to the second database, which is Rep2. So in this particular case, I'm going to create the Rep2 database and go Execute. And if I refresh it, I've got the second database. Now, if I right-click there and go Properties and go Options, you'll see that I have Recovery Model Full, which is the default. I want to change that actually to a simple. So you can use this command, the Alter Database Set Recovery Simple command, to change it. So if I execute this, it's changed. And let's just verify it, that it's changed. And you'll see it's simple. And I'm doing this deliberately because you'll see that when we look at always on availability groups, there are requisites for having certain configurations on the database. And if they're not, then you won't be allowed to do it. Then we have to come back and save it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the third database called Rep3. And that's going to be full recovery also. So you can see here, I'm going to recover it, and that's fine. So now if I refresh it, I've got three databases with Rep1, Rep2, Rep3 with different configurations. So now what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to take full backups of Rec1 server, but not 3 on a shared folder. So I'm going to do that. Before I actually do that, I want to populate the database with a few tables. So if you look at Rep1 here and look at the tables, I don't have any tables. Obviously, none of these databases that I just created have any tables. So we want to just have a few databases with tables, and rather than creating them, I'm just going to import them or export them from this database. So what I'm going to do is right-click, Tasks, and we've gone through this before also, Export. And this wizard pops up, and we're going to select the appropriate source and destination, and just dump a couple of tables. And there's the AdventureWorks source. We're going to go next. Select the SQL client. And this is called SQL Server. Well, actually, it's the same one. It's the same database. Oops. Let me go back. My keyboard doesn't want to behave today. So what I'm just going to do is actually, once this pops up again, this one always takes a little time. It's easier if you actually write the server name. Just go server 1 and select rep 1. Next. I'm just going to copy a table. I'll just copy human resource department. Go next. And just finish. That should just take a second. And that's fine. And now I'm going to do the same and populate the other databases. So hopefully it won't take that long. And you'll be doing this fast also with time. It becomes relatively easier and second nature, obviously, the more you do it. Should have just typed it, but that's okay. So after this, what we're going to do is we're going to set these databases out. We're going to take a backup. We're going to look at some of the, let me just copy that actually for the next one. And go to 2. And let's look at products, this one. Go next, finish. And then lastly, we're going to push it to rep 3. And then each databases will have some data that we can kind of look at if we want to update and see if they're being updated. And then we can start with the, let's paste that. It's a lot easier if you do that. Let's just select employee on that one. And that should be just a few rows also. And there we go. So now that we have, if I refresh it, now that we have databases with various tables, we're going to take backups of them. And we've verified that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually back up these databases to that folder that we spoke of but I'm only going to take backups of rep 1 and rep 2 database, and I'm not going to take rep 3. And now I'm doing that deliberately because I want you to see that when we have always on, this is a very important thing, and it will not allow you to do certain things. So I'm just backing up to those databases, rep 1 and rep 2, to this directory. And if I execute it, it should just take a second. And if I go to here and look at my backups, there we are. Now, remember, this backup folder, this directory, and this specific backup folder has to have access for server 1 and server 2, which it does. So now that we've set it up, actually, we can actually start setting up replication. But before we even do that, I'm going to actually close this. What we're going to do in the next video is we're going to actually start up with the clustering. We're going to create a cluster, and then we're going to start actually replicating these databases. If you go to Always On Availability Group, and if you click it here, you'll see that it says the Always On feature must be enabled for server 1 before you can create the instance. To enable one, go to Server Management Manager and select the services. And this is what we're just talking about right here, the SQL Server Management Configuration Manager, what we talked about. This is what we're talking about, where it needs to be set check. But again, before we need to do that, we need to create a node. So what I'm going to do now, actually, because we need to restart services, is I'm going to restart all 3 servers. I'm going to reboot them, and then we'll come back. And I'm going to pause the video, or actually we're going to pick it up on the next one. But just take a note that I have actually. Let's do this so we know we've taken up the database backups. And what I'm going to do is just go here. Oops, sorry. Go to VM, Power, and I'm going to restart guest. So I'm going to do that for all 3. And then we'll continue with the next session in the next video. So my name is Raphael, and this is how to become a production SQL database administrator. See you in the next video.